Today on the Take On Board podcast, I'm speaking with Kate Larsen about the ethics of AI. Before we start the podcast today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we record. For me, I am on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present, and also to any First Nations people who may be listening or watching today. I acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters, skies, culture and country. I support Voice, Treaty and Truth for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in Australia, and I encourage others in the Take On Board community to do the same. Now, let me tell you about Kate. Although eagle ears will know that Kate has already been on the podcast, so some of this might sound familiar to you. So Kate is an arts, cultural and non-profit consultant and writer with more than 25 years experience in Australia, Asia and the UK. Recently returned to Naarm, Melbourne, Kate has particular expertise in arts governance and cultural leadership, workplace culture and wellbeing, and digital and community engaged practice. As I said, Kate's been on the podcast before, episode 254, on why Palestine is a governance issue that every board should be talking about. And she is currently leading a national conversation about governance reform based on the provocation that nearly everything you thought you knew about boards and governance is wrong. Oh my God, breaking my brain, Kate, as a governance geek. Surely not everything I know is wrong, but maybe it is. Who can tell? It was the title of her TEDx talk on the subject last year, so we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. So, Kate, welcome back to the Take On Board podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
So this came about because I think I'd emailed people about the AI event, the event about AI that we've got coming up. And Kate said, let's talk about some of the ethics stuff as well. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. So here we are. Now, people listening or watching the podcast will know we normally dig a little bit deeper about the person I've got in front of us. If you want to hear Kate's backstory, go to episode 254, because the question I've got for today is a little bit different. So what do you think? You were on the podcast in May 2024. What do you think are the biggest governance changes or challenges that you've observed since that time?
Well, three things come immediately to mind when we talked about this beforehand. And so I'll speak to them quickly. Specifically around this topic, the first thing is the deepening failures that we've seen in terms of purpose and values-led practice, and the impact that has had and continues to have on organisational credibility and even viability. And I guess that's most visible in the for-purpose, not-for-profit sector, but it is happening everywhere because, unfortunately, in spite of all of the very many bad practice examples and lessons we've had to draw from, we've only seen more organisations failing to live up to their purpose or values around freedom of expression or censorship, for example, or diversity, representation, cultural safety. Duty of care is a big one. And specifically, of course, but not limited to, how organisations have chosen to clearly state what they believe in, including in the context of the Palestinian genocide, which is what we talked about last time, as you just said. And that includes the choice, in some cases, to stay silent, which itself is a deliberate and risk-inducing statement. And unfortunately, those kind of failures are continuing right up to the present moment, including at the highest levels, including, you may have seen that Australia's peak arts body, Creative Australia, has arguably decimated its own credibility and destabilised the entire sector through a fumbled governance decision to censor artists, which, while it was later rescinded, had already inflicted the harm it has done. And that move away from purpose and value-led practice is seeing artists and audiences and other stakeholders, donors, divesting in the organisations they once loved, audiences too, ticket holders. And that's having a real impact on organisations' reputations and their financial bottom line. That was my first point. Second is the way that all of that has worsened the already critical issue of governance participation. Because, as I think we talked about last time, governance volunteering number of people willing to go on boards, and specifically unpaid boards, was decreasing even before the pandemic. And when every mainstream news headline about another governance failure is making governance even less attractive, but in the meantime, we're stuck with a legislated governance model that requires us to have boards even if boards are not what we need. And that's risking us running out of board members before we can fix the model that requires them. And that brings me to my third issue, and I promise I'll stop soon. But that all means that we now have fewer and a decreasing number of, and an increasingly stressed cohort of board members. So less board members, fewer board members, to deal with ever increasing and ever more complex issues, including, for example, the mainstreaming of generative AI, and if or how it's used in a governance context, which is what we're going to talk about more
good
today.
Lord. I'm glad that everybody listening to this podcast is already a governance geek, Kate, because I'm not sure I'm not sure that is hey, come and get in governance involved now, because it's hard. It's hard.
It is hard. And, but the thing about our governance model is that it mandates generosity.
Yes.
So even on those boards that get paid and not paid commensurate to our effort, right? And most boards are paid hardly anything or not at all. So governance is an act of mandated generosity. So it is big, and board members are here because they care. The more we can, so this is, a support group for governance nerds to unite, which I absolutely adore and draw so much support from myself. But it's because these issues are so big and complex and changing so fast that these opportunities to come together and talk about these issues are so important. Yeah. I'm already thinking through a whole lot of that, and hoping that the Take On Board community is one part of that, where we can come together and share and talk about it. So then let's turn to the topic for today, which is about AI. I've been doing a bit of a mini-series on AI because everybody's talking about it. Either, it's the answer to all of our problems, or it could be the answer to all of our problems, but we don't know how it works, or just we don't know how it works, or anything in between. So I've done this bit of a mini-series on it where we've talked about AI readiness and just a whole range of issues. And in fact, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure whether this one goes to air, we will have already put to air the one about whether the event will have happened or not, because this was a late one to the party. But let's try and demystify, I guess, as much as possible, some of the ethical issues around it. So where should we start? What are the ethical issues around AI? Often people talk about the ethics of AI and the ethics of, privacy and all tech and all those sorts of things. But as you see it, what are the ethical issues with AI? Well, I think, and some of the podcasts already in the series, as you said, have talked to privacy, confidentiality, the risk of releasing or sharing information with third-party platforms, and you then can't control what they do with it or who they share it with, etc. So I won't go too much into those logistical risks again. But I guess when we're talking about the ethics of AI, we're talking again about that purpose and value-led practice, and how our use of generative AI can make hypocrites of organisations and make them and damaging their reputations, damage their bottom line as well. So, for example, the easiest place to start when we're looking in this space is around the climate crisis, for example. So nearly every organisation I know of has some sort of strategic priority on reducing their environmental footprint. They have done, as we've seen in the strategic planning space, for at least the last 10, 15 years. And in those strategic plans have had an increasing tone of panic as the years go on. But unsurprisingly, I guess, given the rise of the poly crisis we're in now has also, the panic has increased while the concrete actions have decreased. Nonetheless, nearly every organisation will say something: we care about the environment, we care about reducing our footprint, at least on paper, at least in theory. But in the rush to AI readiness, and Dr. Hannah Kana talked about in an earlier podcast that very slightly panicked FOMO feeling that AI readiness induces. Few are considering that their choice to use AI makes meeting those environmental climate crisis commitments much harder. And I'll just run through some of the stats quickly. So there's well-documented impact of AI technology on the environment. So a single request apparently uses between 10 to 50 times more energy than a non-AI search engine. So much so that AI providers themselves are already predicting that existing global energy servers will very soon struggle to cope with just the existing level of unregulated AI. Plus, they heat their servers up to the point that one request requires a full bottle of water to cool it, or that is apparently 9 litres of water per kilowatt of energy. And that's even before you get to the sector's disproportionate and growing contribution to e-waste. So the environmental impact is huge, but it's all the more galling given that the usefulness, the veracity of AI technology is still so much in question. So a report that came out this year said that AI platforms return on average a 60 to 90% error rate. They get the information they give you wrong 60 to 90% of the time, which means any time saved in using the platform will need to be offset by the time needed to verify the information, and with, once again, not just errors drawn from incorrect and unverified source material, but also from what's called hallucinations, which is new fake news that's created by the AI process itself, as well as the overwhelming evidence around AI bias, the issues with data security and privacy we mentioned already, and the impact that all of that has on boards' ability to meet their legal and fiduciary duties, given we can't blame the program if it gives us bad advice. And we can't use that as an excuse if it's that advice is gained in unethical or illegal ways. So that means we're not only sacrificing our environmental aims, but we're doing so to get a worse result, which again creates more issues around organisational values as well as productivity, as does, for example, organisations that say they value diversity or commitment to DEI or anti-racist strategies, but they use AI that it has been documented to be biased against people of colour, for example, or disabled people, or organisations that purport to uphold human rights in any kind of rights-based context, but use AIs that have been documented as playing an instrumental role in human rights abuses all over the world. And then, obviously, I work mostly within the arts and culture space, so I wanted to share one example from there too, in that similarly, nearly every arts and cultural sector organisation has some kind of strategic priority around valuing and supporting artists and creatives, because of course they do, because they rely upon those artists and creators for their programs, for their services. So there is a particular hypocrisy and a particular risk around organisations that use and endorse generative AI, whether they use it, they might not necessarily use it in their programs, but they might use it in their offices and as back of house in their marketing. All of those generative AI platforms steal from artists and creatives. Their business model is based on theft. Given that all of those AI datasets are primarily based on unlicensed, uncredited and uncompensated source material, as we've seen in Meta's recent theft of millions of books to train its large language model, which is called Llama 3. And that's on the input side. On the output side, because AI technology is moving faster than the courts, moving faster than legal precedent, at this point it is actually unclear, untested, who, if you create something using generative AI, it is legally unclear who is the author or the owner or the copyright holder of anything that AI platforms generate. Is it the platform? Is it you who generated it? Is it the owners of the copyright that was stolen to feed the platform? Though again, of course, you can't use that as an excuse if AI made content you've generated breaches someone else's copyright or breaks any other laws, even if you didn't know it had done so. So at least if you steal something yourself, you know you've stolen it. In this case, you don't know, but that's not an excuse for that theft. And that's, then there's a whole other argument around the fact that AI, and again, most hypocritical for creative organisations, but across the board, AI stifles creativity and de-skills the staff and board members that use it. And again, a recent MIT study has shown reliance on AI is already decreasing cognitive ability and learning skills, and specifically creative thinking skills, which, thanks again in part to AI, we've never needed more, right? And at the same time, it's doing that for a worse result. So it's turning out these cookie cutter, less competitive outcomes that people spot and dismiss as AI, that is making us less competitive when we're putting them out in the world.
Oh, God, okay. Thanks, Kate. I think. So there's a real, what's the word? What's it called when you've got opposing forces? Irony, that's not the word. Whatever, can't think of the word, it'll come to me. Conundrum, that'll do. There's a real tension in here. It feels to me like the AI train is with us and not going to stop. And therefore there's this FOMO that people are feeling that others have talked about. It's like, got to get on the train because the train's going. And I definitely feel that. I feel like the train's for individually, but also on the organisations that I'm on the board of. Yet there are massive issues with it. How do we... And I don't think the AI train's going to stop. So how do we... Actually, and I've got to check, do you use AI?
I have used AI before I started doing this research into AI, including I wrote an article where I asked AI to comment about the legal copyright implications of AI. I now consciously try to not use AI, but of course AI, the train has a cessation as the stay. So I don't go to specific AI platforms, but AI is so much part of that every day.
And it runs in the background often and you don't even know it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I try to avoid it, but I also acknowledge that the train has left the station. I also am not, and I think people who are speaking out about AI at the moment sometimes get, you get the impression that they're wowsers or naysayers or Luddites, anti-technology complainers. I'm a technology evangelist. Like, I can absolutely see a future with equitable and ethical AI incorporated into all of our lives. And I can absolutely see why people are getting that FOMO feeling. I agree, in this day and age, organisations can't put off having a conversation about if and how to engage with AI. However, I also think that we can't let our nervousness around our lack of knowledge about what's possible, or our fear of being left behind, rush us into poorly formed and then poorly implemented policies and practices, or allow us to lose sight of our organisation's purposes or values. Because as we've just talked about, those aren't warm, fuzzy, fluffy things that sit only in our strategic plans and we revisit once in 4 years, they are the backbone of our organisations, and whether we hold ourselves accountable or to them or not can have a clear impact on our reputation and our financial bottom lines, and that's absolutely board business. So I absolutely believe it's possible, but I think we need to have a full, rather than rushing on in along with things, we need to have full and frank kind of cost benefit analysis of what it is we're likely to gain, and again, what we're likely to gain based on those astonishing error and bias rate and the potential legal risks, versus what we're willing to compromise for those less than rosy gains, ethically, environmentally, and in a governance context, and most importantly, in terms of meeting our fiduciary duties and our duties of care. In AI, there are so many extraordinary potentials for AI. I've worked a lot in the disability space, and its contribution as an access provider, as a requirement, is extraordinary. Its potential contribution to literacy is extraordinary. But at the moment, the people who need it the most are being asked to shoulder more than their fair share of the ethical responsibility. And those of us who don't actually need it that much right now are risking, as I said, sacrificing those organisational values and ethics and creating more risk for our organisations in doing so, when we can make a choice to not. So an AI policy can be, a valid AI policy, it can be to have we don't use AI policy, or we don't use AI policy until ethical environmental alternatives are in place.
Have you, do you know of organisations that have done we don't use AI until?
Oh, absolutely. So we're seeing a real trend in that, and around. And well, I won't name them here because I haven't got the permission to do so. But we're seeing a real trend in conversations happening around and again centred around for-purpose sector orgs. Initially, we're also seeing a generational change in organisations with younger board members, because there's a real age division around younger people being less interested in AI because of those environmental and ethical.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because it would challenge in some ways you need younger people involved in governance because they understand technology better.
It's
interesting that this is almost the full circle of it, I guess. They understand it better, so much so that they understand some of the ethical challenges with it better than the older folk.
Absolutely. So I think that's something we need to pay attention to, right? If that's the rhetoric we've been following for all this time. So there are, there's quite a few examples of people working in that space now, and there are some who are not only saying our AI policy is to have a no AI policy for now, and there are some who are also then taking that the step further, to say not only are we going to do this internally, but we're going to then help the sector get to that stage. So that could be by joining one of the campaigns to lobby the Australian government around the AI legislation that they've promised that will protect creators' rights and hold big tech companies accountable for that kind of theft, for example. Or there are international campaigns around lobbying the providers themselves to publish like a rating system. So publish a carbon footprint and human rights report. So for their LLMs, their learning models, so that consumers can choose. So I choose this one because it's better environmentally rated, or I choose this one because it has a better human rights record. So we can be part of the solution as well as choosing to not be part of the problem.
Yes, because it is very unclear, untransparent, whatever the word is for untransparent. I'm not doing well with my words today, but whatever that word is.
Opaque.
Yes, thank you, opaque. um, about partly what is being fed in. Also, as you were describing before, the energy use of it. I think that is becoming a little more well known, but it's not exactly transparent from them about the energy uses as well. And I think, the bottle of water analogy, I've heard a few times, and it really helps enormously because you're like, I've used AI to help me with my travel plans before, and I'm like, oh God, how many bottles of water have I just,
Yeah, exactly. And I think we are going to, part of the issue we're seeing with AI at the moment is that it's on a little bit, it's both growing exponentially and kind of self-sabotaging in that it is, again, there have been reports I've recently about AI is getting dumber over time, not smarter, because it's drawing on AI generated material now, not just non-AI generated materials. So, and we know that AI generated material has a 60-90% error rate. So it's drawing on errors and producing more and more errors in a downward spiral. So not good. And all of those stats that we were just talking about, most of them are coming out of the States, where there's been more research done, but these gigantic AI data farms are everywhere around the world now. And as I said, existing electricity providers are already predicting that current supplies are about to be impacted. And there's these fascinating and depressing stats coming out of the States about the communities where these AI data farms are based are already struggling, the direct communities are already struggling with their power needs. And that was before, so AI has just been further deregulated in the States just in the last 10 days or so. So that was before any of that's happened. So in that downward spiral, these AI data farms are going to start impacting people's ability to access power and water very soon. So this is so often, and to our shame as humans, we are better at kind of tut-tutting at bad news when it doesn't affect us directly. This is about to affect us, many more people directly.
And will affect people directly, and also, I'm assuming, affect some people disproportionately, probably not the rich first world, if first world is still the terminology we should be using. So affect a whole bunch of people who, may be more invisible to us, which they shouldn't be. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's certainly who it's been affecting most so far. But you're right, it is going to be that deepening of that deficit is going to be most keenly felt in the global south and in communities who have already been marginalised. And it is a depressing fact of privilege. But once richer, whiter, wealthier people start getting impacted, then we might see more of this advocacy happen, because we can't, because it's self-defeating again for AI, right? So we can't, even those of us who want to use AI, if we can't load up our laptops to do so because the AI data farms have absorbed all the power, then...
Oh, good Lord, Kate, there is so much to think through here, isn't there? So much to think through. There's no way we're going to cover this off in half an hour. But what I'm hearing is boards need to be very conscious about this stuff and not just jump on the train because the train is in the station, but to very consciously think about, the ethics of it, but there are a number of layers to that. It might be around climate change. It might be around intellectual property. It might be around risk and return on investment type risk, about those sorts of things, and some of these things cross over. But I think what I'm hearing is be very conscious and be very true to your own purpose as an organisation. Don't see it as, that's just a technology thing. It's over there. It's completely separate. It's not. It's part of the DNA.
It's not. Absolutely. And we don't have to have the confidence to know everything about it. We just have to have the confidence to take a breath and to realise that we don't have to have an end solution now. We don't have to jump on the bandwagon, and that it is perfectly valid to make a decision in the first instance to say that right now the level of risk involved around incorrect information, the level of risk around data security and privacy, around copyright and intellectual property, the level of risk around our organisational ethics and values is too high for us to say we're happy to use AI. We would prefer our staff members and our board members refrain from doing so until a point in the future where we have more comfort around those
and
things.
or at least some transparency around it, so you know what the IP is that's being impacted, and you know the climate change impacts and so on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's my key takeaways. What are the key things you want people to take away from the conversation that we've had today, Kate?
Well, I think that's it for me, is that that our purpose and values-led practice is not window dressing. It is and should be inherent to everything that we do, and particularly within for-purpose sectors, but not exclusively. And that I completely understand that rushed, panicked FOMO feeling. There is big business around AI, and that's the real change, I think, going back to what we started with, is that even around AI and governance has become big business in some sectors.
Apologies for the distraction, folks. Mungo the cat has just decided to join us. Sorry, Kate.
No, that's fine. I'm delighted. Yes, so there is understandable pressure and a panic and what feels like pressure to be on top of this. But my biggest takeaway is just to take a breath and to not let that FOMO feeling override that more considered cost-benefit analysis about what we're likely to gain versus what we're willing to sacrifice to get there.
Interesting. Yeah, which for me, if I keep my train analogy, it's like the train might stop at the station, but you don't need to get on the first train. There'll be another one in 5 minutes, and you can really think about where it's going and what it needs to do and where you're going and all of those sorts of things.
And let's hope it's a better and more comfortable and more accessible train.
Exactly. Mungo the cat has now just drunk out of my glass and just said, that's it, I'm out of here now. So thanks. Now that's the end of my glass. Anyway, with apologies for the distraction. So, okay, so is there a resource you would like to share with the Take On Board community?
Yes, so I will... I think we'll put a bunch of things in the show notes, but in particular, I have recently published an article on this subject on Arts Hub about AI and arts governance. So, of course, these issues are relevant far and beyond the arts and cultural sector as well.
Great. And yes, we will make sure there is a link to that in the show notes. It's partly what started this whole conversation, as in not right here and now, but a couple of weeks ago when it went out. Okay, thank you. I mean this in the nicest possible way, but you break my brain sometimes. Is it part of that everything you thought you knew about governance you need to throw out the window? Thanks, I think.
Well, thanks for inviting me back to break your brain again. And this is not all my wisdom, right? This is, as I said in the article, this is drawing on lots of research and lots of knowledge from all over the world. Yeah. So I am just delighted to be part of this conversation with you all.
Thanks for joining us today. And we'll see you back for the next topic to break my brain. Thanks for being here.
Amazing. Thanks so much.